In 1952, a man was given 3 months to live. His doctors told him there was nothing more they could do. Go home, they said. Rest. Say your goodbyes. He was 42 years old, a physicist, a businessman, someone who had spent his entire life building things, solving problems, achieving, and now he was being told it was over. So he went home. He sat down in his apartment, alone. And instead of calling people, instead of making arrangements, instead of doing anything a person is supposed to do when they find out they are dying, he just sat there. And he started thinking, not planning, not strategizing, just thinking about his life, about what any of it had meant. And in that silence, something happened. Something he had never experienced before. He asked himself a question, a simple question. What can I actually do? Not what do I have, not what have I achieved. What can I actually do, right now, as I am, with nothing left to prove? And when that question landed, everything changed. His name was Lester Levenson, and what he discovered in that apartment in New York, in the spring of 1952, is what I want to share with you today. Because 3 months passed, he didn't die. Then a year passed. He still didn't die. In fact, he started getting stronger. And then he did something that almost nobody does when they've just had a profound spiritual awakening. He tested it. He was a physicist, after all. He said, if what I've found is real, let me find out exactly how real. And what he found will take the rest of this to explain. Stay with me. Let's go back to that apartment. Lester Levenson had spent his life doing what intelligent, ambitious people do. He worked hard. He built businesses. He accumulated things. And he was also deeply, persistently unhappy. 2 heart attacks by 42. Stomach ulcers. Liver problems. Depression. The success was real. The suffering was also real. And when his doctors sent him home to die, he finally had the one thing he had never allowed himself to have. Time. Time to just sit. And in that sitting, he noticed something. He noticed that his mind never stopped. Craving this, fearing that, wanting more, resisting what was, an endless, exhausting machine, running day and night, producing suffering as its primary output. But then he noticed something else. Underneath all of that noise, there was something quiet, something that was not the noise, something that was watching the noise, a part of him that was not afraid, not craving, not suffering, just present, still. And the more he turned his attention toward that stillness, the more it expanded. And as it expanded, something remarkable happened. His body began to heal, slowly, then unmistakably, then completely. By the time the 3 months were up, the 3 months he had been given to live, he felt better than he had in years. His doctors had no explanation. Lester had one. He called it releasing, and it would become the foundation of everything. He spent the next 4 decades teaching. Now, I want to tell you something important, because here is where most people misunderstand what Lester found. When people discover that inner peace is possible, that there is a stillness underneath the noise, they sometimes make a mistake. They think, this means I should want nothing. That ambition is the problem. That desire is the enemy. That to be truly free, you have to give everything up. Lester saw people around him making this mistake. People who heard his teaching and concluded, I should be poor. I should want nothing. Wanting is the trap, and he knew this was wrong. He knew it in his bones. Because the problem was never wanting. The problem was the desperate, gripping, white-knuckled kind of wanting, the kind that says, I cannot be okay until I have this thing. That kind of wanting, the wanting that comes from fear, that is the trap. But wanting from a place of wholeness, wanting that comes from abundance, rather than lack, that is something else entirely. And Lester decided he was going to prove the difference. He was going to show with numbers, with real money, in the real world, that a person can have everything without needing anything. In 1953, Lester Levenson started over. No cash, no investments, no safety net, just a clear mind and an understanding. He had spent a year developing. He entered the real estate market. He borrowed. He financed. He bought properties. But the way he did it was different from how most people approach business. He described it this way: every transaction had to be in harmony. Every single person involved, the seller, the buyer, the broker, the lawyer, every one of them had to benefit. Not just him. Everyone. He wrote about this later. He said, "If there's a broker, I made sure they received what they expected. If there's a seller, they got what they wanted. If there's a lawyer, they got their fee. Everyone in every deal had to walk away better than they came in." That, he said, was not generosity. That was physics. Because he had come to understand something about the nature of things. Harmony is not just a nice idea. It is the mechanism through which things actually work. When all parts of a system benefit, when there is no hidden cost, no one quietly losing, so someone else can win, the system moves easily, almost effortlessly. And when the system is being forced, when someone has to lose, for you to win, there is always resistance, always friction, always a cost that shows up somewhere eventually. 6 months later, he had made $1 million in 1953 dollars from nothing. And then he did something that shocked the people around him. He gave it all away. He liquidated everything. And when people asked him why, he said something that stops most people cold. He said, "Accumulating wealth assumes that I might not be able to have it when I need it. But I know now that I can have what I need when I need it. So why hold on?" Think about what he was saying. Most of us accumulate things because somewhere underneath, we don't fully trust that more can come. So we hold, we hoard, we grip. We build walls of possessions against a future we're afraid of. But Lester had discovered something that made the gripping unnecessary. He had found a way of being in which need was met as it arose, not by magic, not by luck, but by alignment, by the same harmony that had made his business work. And he wanted to test it in the simplest, most direct way possible. Just him. No money. No plan. Let's see what happens. It was approaching Christmas. He decided he wanted to spend 2 weeks somewhere warm. He was in New York. Los Angeles seemed right. He had almost no money. He had no ticket. He had no place to stay. He had no car. And in Los Angeles, not having a car is a problem. But he packed a bag. And as he was walking out the door, he said something to himself. He said, "Everything will unfold. I will be taken care of." Not as a wish, not as a hope. As a fact he had already decided was true. He walked out of his building. Before he had even turned the corner, he bumped into a friend he hadn't seen in years. And the friend stopped him and said, "Lester, I've been looking for you. Do you remember that money I borrowed? I've been trying to pay you back." Right there on the street. He had the money for a round-trip ticket to Los Angeles. Now, you can call that coincidence. Many people would. But Lester would ask you, what exactly is a coincidence? Is it the universe randomly throwing things together? Or is it what happens when you are in a certain state of alignment, when you are not broadcasting fear, not gripping, not sending out the signal that says the world is against you, and instead you are simply open, simply present, simply trusting? He flew to Los Angeles. He called an old friend on a whim. The friend said, "Lester, we just bought a new place. There's an extra room. Where are you staying?" The accommodation was solved. The next morning, standing in the kitchen, he had a passing thought. He thought, "I'm in Los Angeles. You can't get around this city without a car. I don't have a car." And this is the part that matters. he thought. Someone will sort it out. And he let the thought go. Not suppressed it. Not worried it. Not tried to solve it. Released it. An hour later, he called another old friend. They met for coffee. Before Lester had said a word about needing anything, the friend reached into his pocket and put a set of car keys on the table. He said, "I walk to work. This car is just sitting there. Use it as long as you need. Every piece of the trip, the ticket, the place to stay, the car, arrived without Lester forcing any of it." He wrote about this later. He said, "I have learned that I already have everything I need, precisely when I need it. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because this can be misread easily." Lester was not passive. He was not sitting in a room, refusing to take action. He packed the bag. He walked out the door. He called the friend. He moved. What he wasn't doing was moving from fear. He wasn't calculating all the ways it might go wrong. He wasn't gripping the outcome so tightly that no other outcome could arise. He was moving and releasing, acting and trusting, doing his part, and then letting go of the result. That is a very specific way of operating, and it is the opposite of how most of us have been taught to live. We have been taught the harder you grip, the more you get. Control everything, predict everything, plan for every possibility. And if it doesn't work, grip harder. But Lester had found that the gripping itself was the problem, not the wanting, the gripping, the desperate attachment to the outcome that comes from believing you are not enough. Without it, that belief, that felt sense of incompleteness, generates a signal, and that signal shapes everything. The decisions you make, the risks you won't take, the opportunities you walk past, because some part of you doesn't believe you deserve them. The people who can sense, in a conversation with you, whether you need something from them or whether you're simply present. We all sense this in others, and others sense it in us. Lester had become someone who needed nothing, not because he wanted nothing, but because he had found a place inside himself that was already full, and from that fullness, everything flowed. He spent the next 4 decades teaching what he had found. He called it the Sedona Method. 7 principles, 7 invitations, each one asking you to look at the assumptions you're carrying and consider whether they're actually true. I want to walk you through the 3 that I believe are the most essential. The first is this: what is the ultimate goal? What is the thing underneath all the other things you think you want? Lester's answer was simple. Happiness without opposite. Not the happiness that depends on things going right. Not the happiness that collapses when the deal falls through, or the relationship ends, or the diagnosis comes. Happiness that has no shadow side. Happiness that simply is, the way awareness simply is. And he said this: everything you have ever wanted, everything on the list, the money, the love, the recognition, you wanted it because you believed it would make you happy. But the happiness you're looking for is already here. It is what you are, underneath all the noise. You don't need to find it. You need to stop covering it up. He offered an exercise. Make a list. Write down everything you believe would make you happy. The person, the amount, the achievement, the recognition. Write it all down. And then ask yourself, can I allow myself to be happy right now while those things are still on the list? Not instead of them, not by abandoning them, but alongside them. Can I feel the fullness right now while the desire is still alive? Because here is the thing about wanting. The wanting doesn't go away. You don't become some blank, desire-free saint. But the nature of the wanting can change. It can shift from, I cannot be okay until I have this, to, I'm already okay, and I am moving toward this. That shift, from lack to fullness, from fear to desire, changes everything. The decisions that come from that place are different. The energy you carry into a room is different. The way people respond to you is different. And eventually, the outcomes are different. The second principle is this: what is the problem? And what is the solution? Lester offered something unusual here. He offered what he called paired opposites, not contradictions. Opposites, like two sides of the same coin. Here is one pair. Problems exist, and also, everything is already complete. These are not contradictions. They can both be true at once. Yes, there is something in your life that needs attention, and also, underneath the problem, the situation, the difficulty, there is a completeness that the problem cannot touch. Another pair: I am the one doing this, and also, something larger is working through me. This is not about giving up responsibility. It is about loosening the grip of the ego that insists it must control everything, or it has failed. When you can hold both of these at once, I am acting, and something larger is at work. The action becomes lighter, less desperate, more clear, because you are no longer trying to force the universe into the shape you've decided it must take. You are moving and trusting. The third principle is this: how does inner growth actually happen? And again, Lester offered a pair. I want freedom, and also, I am already free. I want to have this, and also, it is not I who achieves it. It is something working through me. The circumstances need to change, and also, everything is already complete, exactly as it is. Now, reading these pairs, you might feel a kind of frustration. They seem to cancel each other out. If everything is already complete, why try? If I am already free, why change anything? But that is the ego's question. The ego thinks in either/or. Either I am lacking, so I must strive, or I am complete, so I can stop. But Lester was pointing at something that lives outside either/or. A place where you can strive without grasping, where you can want without needing, where you can work without the desperate fear that if it doesn't work, you have failed at being alive. That place is what he spent his life pointing at, and it is accessible right now, not after you achieve the thing, not after the account reaches a certain number, not after the relationship, the recognition, the body, the house. Right now. Lester put it this way. He said, whatever problem you are holding, you are only holding it because you are holding it in your thoughts. The moment you release it, it simply ceases to be. Don't look at the problem. Look at what you want. And from this moment forward, if you look only at what you want, that is what you will have. That is what you will become. Now, I know some of this is difficult to believe, and I understand that. The first time you hear that your inner state shapes your outer experience, it can feel like wishful thinking, like someone trying to convince you that if you just feel good enough, reality will rearrange itself in your favor. That is not what Lester was saying. He was not saying, think happy thoughts and money appears. He was saying something more precise. He was saying, the state you operate from determines the quality of your decisions. The decisions you make determine the actions you take. The actions you take determine the results you get, and the state is the beginning. If the state is fear, the decisions are fear-based. The actions are defensive. The results reflect that. If the state is wholeness, the decisions are clear. The actions are generous. The results reflect that. This is not mysticism. This is psychology. This is physics. This is what every serious student of human behavior has found when they look carefully at the lives of people who build something real, something that lasts, something that helps people rather than just extracting from them. The pattern is always the same. An inner shift came first, and then the outer world began to change. Lester lived for 42 years. After he was supposed to be dead, he died in 1994, at the age of 84. He never accumulated a fortune again. Not because he couldn't. Because he didn't need to. He had proven what he set out to prove, that you don't need things. To be whole, that wholeness comes first, and everything else follows. He left behind a method, 7 principles, simple questions, paired opposites, that ask you to hold 2 things at once and find the space between them. the space between wanting and having, between striving and trusting, between doing and allowing. That space is where the most important work happens, not the work on your schedule, not the work on your goals, the work on what you believe you actually are. Because when you know what you are, when you have sat with the stillness, underneath the noise, even for a moment, something becomes possible that wasn't before. Not because the world changed, because you did, and you are the instrument through which your entire life is played. Tune the instrument. The music changes. Lester Levenson proved it. With his body, with his bank account, with his 40 years of life that he wasn't supposed to have. He would tell you, place this somewhere you see it every day. Write it down. I already have everything I need, precisely when I need it, not as a wish, as a recognition, because you are not asking the world to give you something. You are remembering something that was always true. The stillness was always here. The wholeness was always here. It has been here. Every moment you thought it was gone. It is here right now. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.